Today we're at the 2019 Hyundai Veloster. This one we're driving today is the Turbo R-Spec variant. It has these twin spoke alloy wheels with Michelin Pilot Sport 4 summer tires. This is kind of the highest performance variant. Call it the driver enthusiast version of the Veloster. 6-speed manual with a B&M sport shifter, slightly stiffer dampers and whatnot. It's a pretty sporty version of this Veloster. It's interesting because they've done a little bit of a redesign on this car, but really they've kept true to its original form. You've got a lot of trunk space, a nice deep low back in the hatch, plenty of room to fold the seats down for quite a bit of cargo space. And you've got the classic Veloster, 2 doors on one side and the coupe door on the driver's side. This is actually, interesting enough, it's interchangeable between right and left-hand drive. So, but they chose to make this its classic 3-door shape, which I think is kind of cool. It's unique in the market and really sets this car apart. Each different variant of the Veloster has a different styled interior. This has this kind of yellow and gray theme, which I think looks pretty cool. You've got lots of different surfaces and design cues throughout the interior, and this also has the Infinity sound system, which we actually haven't tested out yet, and we probably won't in this video for music licensing purposes, but we'll let you know how it sounds in the comments. We've got some cool little turbo badging on the sides here, and I think overall a pretty neat looking car. I definitely prefer this to the look of the original Veloster. You've got we've been talking about a sportier roof line and everything, and this definitely has a neat look from the rear end. It's kind of squat, hunkered down with this diffuser, and these are actually real center dual exhaust tips, which is pretty cool. This 1.6 liter turbo puts out 195 pound-feet of torque and 201 horsepower through this 6-speed manual transmission. This shift knob, or this shifter, is a B&M short shifter, just a little bit shorter than the standard shifter on the regular turbo, like the Turbo Ultimate. And you've got different drive modes. You've got a sport mode, a normal mode, and you can actually go in here. This is going to be one of the main things we're going to be testing in this video today, is the different sounds. So this is active engine sound. You can turn it off, have minimized, normal, and enhanced. And we're just going to start with it off and kind of go through the different modes, but it basically replicates the engine sound and puts that in through the speakers, so you get just a little bit more of a louder exhaust and engine note. Can't really tell at idle and revving in neutral, but we'll get a feel for it once we get some load on the engine on the road. Pretty sporty seats. They keep you in nicely. Nice cloth, and some neat little design elements throughout. Eric Stafford's going to be riding along with us from Car and Driver. If you want to read some written words on this, check out his in-depth review, probably coming up in a few weeks. Give you a little plug there.
Thanks. Needed it.
Yeah, that's right.
Needed that boost today.
That's right. Extra views, man. First thing you notice is this cool looking little shifter. I believe this is billet aluminum. It has a nice look and a pretty good feel to it. It is angled forward just a little bit. All short shifters tend to kind of change the shift positioning, and this is definitely no exception. It's pretty short between gears, but still has a little bit of that OEM rubbery feel typical with Hyundai shifters, and but it's nice. It's a little bit sportier. You can kind of flick it between gates. It feels a little bit like the Fiesta ST, to be honest. My only gripe is that it's a little bit forward and could be just a little bit longer of a reach for some taller drivers who need to be back up in the seats. One thing I wanted to test out in this video is the active engine sound settings. So here's an example of a little pull and off. So there are completely natural engine sounds coming through the cabin. Let's go straight up to enhanced. Do another little pull here. It's a subtle difference, not really in your face, not super noticeable. It's just a little bit throatier, and it's all piped in through the speakers, so it's kind of enhancing natural sounds, but also just kind of programmed to work with throttle position, engine RPM, stuff like that. Maybe adds a little bit of sportiness. It's no replacement for like a exhaust or, you know, anything like that, but it's just kind of a cool little thing to play with. Normal seems to be a nice medium.
I gotta be honest, I feel like they have off and then one sound setting, but they gave you minimized, normal, and enhanced just to feel like it's that much more premium. Because
Exactly,
I'm telling you,
yeah.
you cannot.
It's very,
you can
very hard to
barely. I'm
notice.
sitting here just listening hard to hear the difference, and I can't.
Yep. No, it's very subtle. I don't even know if you'll be able to pick it up on the microphones.
Maybe the microphone's better than my ear, and that might actually help.
Yeah.
Do a little auto tune. Just pipe in some 6-cylinder sounds.
There we go. I wish there was maybe a off minimized Ferrari V12.
Yeah, just you could import some different sounds and different flavors.
So let's talk a little bit about the engine and the power band. I thought this 1.6 is a pretty nice little unit. It's got 195 pound-feet of torque with a 205 pound-feet of torque overboost function, and similar to the Elantra GT and the Elantra Sport. And it has a pretty nice power band. Not a lot of fall off to the higher RPMs. Actually, it pulls so hard to redline that redline kind of creeps up on you at about 6,500 RPM. And I found myself bouncing off it a little bit, but it has a nice amount of power. Good pull, great torque, and very low RPM, so we can cruise in 5th gear here at about 2,200 RPM, and after about a second of turbo lag, you get a decent amount of boost. I think peak torque in this was like 1,500 RPM from to 4,500 RPM. It was pretty decent. One thing we were talking about a little bit today is just how the Veloster has maybe the sportiest character of the Elantra GT, Elantra Sport, Veloster batch. So not only does it kind of look the part, look the sportiest, but it drives that way too. It's a little bit stiffer. Things tend to feel a little bit tighter, a little bit maybe a little bit more refined, maybe because this is a newer model, but this is a nice little package. I think, for the price, if you're looking to get into something as a first car or a first sporty car, this would probably be pretty capable around the autocross. Not a lot of torque steer at all. You can feel a little bit of torque vectoring around that corner where the electronics are braking that inside wheel. Overall, pretty composed dynamics in this. It's a little bit stiff, a little bit bumpy on this rougher road, but it's not unlivable. I don't think this would be unbearable. It's just I'd call it a busy ride.
And there's quite a bit of road noise too. Like you said, chalk it up to the tires a little bit.
Yep.
They all ride on 18-inch wheels.
Yeah, these pilots they're pretty grippy. They are a little bit noisier and a little bit stiffer, as well as the R-Spec has slightly differently tuned dampers. Eric was talking about this just a minute ago, is that Hyundai does a nice job putting together entry-level interiors, and all the touch points on this. The steering wheel is nice. You've got this cool little yellow / greenish yellow accent on the steering wheel and on the seats and throughout the cabin, and it has just kind of a little bit of a sporty flair to it. It almost reminds me a little bit of what's the BMW yellow on the M3s.
Yeah.
It's very close to that, and kind of a neat little feature. And of course, everything else is pretty typical Hyundai. You've got your standard switch gear here, and it's all very intuitive, and touchscreen responds pretty quickly to your inputs. One nice thing is you do have tire pressure monitoring here, where you can see your pressures on the fly, which is very useful for track days, autocross, stuff like that.
I appreciate it when they have like a sportier model, as the R-Spec would be considered, and they do. They just don't go overboard. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to. Doesn't have to be thrown in your face that it's the sportier model.
Sure.
You throw a few accents in there, something like that. That's all I need.
No, this is a good little entry-level enthusiast car, and I think with the new redesign, it looks the part, and the 3-door layout is kind of funky, kind of cool. It's totally unique. and practically it makes sense, and also it's just, I think it's cool. Some people probably don't get it or know why it exists, but they're not going to buy a Veloster. What I'd really like to see, though, is a Veloster Raptor, where it's just lifted on like 34s, Fox suspension, maybe like a winch.
Why not?
Yeah.
Probably gonna need it.
So
just Raptor everything.
Hyundai, if you're listening, which I'm sure they are, you know where our heart lies.
You know where our heart lies. Off the beaten path.
Let's get a little example of grip.
Feel the grip.
Yeah, it's not bad, especially on this off-camber turn.
Feels more stable in the passenger seat than it did in the driver's seat, to be honest. These seats do a good job of keep being supportive and comfortable.
Brake pedal
keep
feels
going
nice.
through to White Lake Road in this one.
Cool. This would be a potent little autocross car. That torque vectoring is great. Oops, this is the wrong road, isn't it?
Probably. Don't feel bad though, because it didn't even say where White Lake Road was.
It seemed like the right place to floor it, so I'm just gonna go on that.
What happened to all the signs they had set up? I'm a sign person.
Oh, yeah, here's White Lake.
Okay. Oh, just another excuse to do the loop.
Yeah. I think I forgot to do the trip odometer anyway, so
Yeah, it's all
we're
right,
totally
don't worry
off.
about it. I'm trying to be extra diligent. No, I'm telling you, these seats
Yeah,
are really
this is good.
supportive while being comfortable.
And that torque vectoring out of corners actually works. Yeah.
You know, I'm really not put off by the sound of it either, really.
No, it's fine.
It doesn't sound great, but it doesn't sound bad. It sounds at least not coarse or flat.
I think the engine sound piped through the speakers, it adds to the car, because if you don't like it, you can turn it off. And if you do like it, you can keep it on, and it's not overdone. Yeah.
I know this is right between 2 and 3, or 22 and 23 grand.
Yep.
I know they didn't include the destination charge, it's like $900. But really, for like 23, just say 24, I think it's a pretty good package for the price. I mean,
Yeah.
when you consider, so you could get a Civic Si for about the same price, or
You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me a little bit of the Fiesta ST, but a little bit more buttoned down, a little bit more conservative.
yeah, a little more low slung.
Yes.
And it definitely has more cargo space. I would be willing to bet.
This has more cargo space than like CX-3 and like some other, you know.
And it looks, I'll have to sit back there, but definitely more rear seat legroom and space than, maybe not headroom than the Fiesta, but I mean, the Fiesta was such a great car. I really
awesome.
love that car.
Yeah. But like the power delivery, the shifter, it has some of that Fiesta ST character. Not quite in the handling. There's a little bit more understeer. It's neutral, but it feels a little bit softer and a little bit safer.
Yeah.
Fiesta ST always felt like there was just a massive rear bar, and that was fun. But
it felt nimbler
moved
for
around
sure.
a little bit. Yeah. Let's do a little traction control off action here.
Oh, it's just staying on. You're just spinning them.
No, it flashed once, but it's really putting down its power pretty well. I mean, these Michelins they're sticky, so
yeah, the tires are.
That's to be expected.
I would be interested to see the next, because I think we're switching vehicles. I would be interested to see the difference without the summer tires, with the same powertrain.
Yeah. But I have a lot of confidence in this thing. Oops, sorry.
No,
saw that jump and I was like,
well,
should probably slow down a little bit. This isn't the Veloster Raptor yet.
Really pushing for that.
As far as feedback, there isn't a ton of steering feel. You can kind of feel from the seat of your pants what the car is doing, and there's a lot of mechanical grip, especially with these tires. Brake pedals reasonably stiff, but again, not a ton of feel there either. It's definitely tighter and just a little bit stiffer feeling overall than the rest of the Elantra lineup, at least the Sport and the GT Sport. I do like this shifter a lot. Clutch pedal's it's a little bit of a shorter engagement point, and it's maybe not as light as the rest of the range. It's nice. It's easy to heel and tow, easy to rev match, pretty easy to launch and everything.
These sporty compacts, really, I mean, they do it all. You know, they've got the practicality for the most part. They can be fun to drive. Vehicles like this look good inside. They look good on the outside. I wasn't a big fan of the first gen Veloster. It really didn't. Like, it was interesting, but it was not, I don't know. It didn't come off as like sporty fun to me.
Sure.
It was kind of just like it was like a CHR kind of look to me. Like, where I think it's cool looking, but I don't know, it didn't really grab me. Whereas this one's definitely sharper. It's definitely in my opinion, it's less dramatic, but it still is like a nice evolution of what the original Veloster was. Obviously with the 3 doors. But see, would you call this a 4-door now with the hatch? So it's a clunky way to say, oh, the 4-door Veloster, and you're like,
it's just a 3-door. Yeah, I don't know.
Like, you know, because you know how they go with the 5-door. It's a 5-door with a hatch, they call it. And so now you say a 4-door, and they're like, wait.
Open to interpretation. Yeah, I definitely thought this car was going to be a little bit too stiff from first impressions, but after driving it for about an hour or so, it's pretty good. It's pretty livable. I don't really have any complaints with ride quality, and we've been driving over some pretty decent roads. It's definitely a little bit busy of a ride, but I don't think it's uncomfortable or that the passengers would necessarily complain. Haven't really taken it on the highway too much in this drive, but from before I was rolling with the camera and before I was driving, it felt pretty good. I think really, you know, this is kind of a no compromise car. There are like a lot of, you know, the Hyundais that are out these days, and like its counterparts in the Elantra GT and the Elantra Sport. It kind of comes down to your personal preference, what you're going to be using the car for, what you prefer style-wise and body-wise. I like the look of this new Veloster. I think it really hits a nice design mark, and there are just a lot of little cues that make it look special. And from the driver's seat, it's pretty nice. All the touch points are good. It feels nice. I do really like this shifter. The more I drive it, the more I just kind of want to row through the gears. And it's a good package. Everything, the feel of it is consistent throughout. It has a lot of buttons. The infotainment's really easy to use. The sound system, we just tried that off camera, and it sounds great. I'd be totally happy with this sound system. It really bumps. It has nice bass and just not really an audiophile, but to me it sounds really, really nice, and you can really enjoy your music in this car. So overall, pretty good impressions on the Veloster, and this R-Spec is definitely kind of I'd say, I'm going to call it your autocross special, but really it would make a fine daily driver, and it's got some cool looks. There's some fun, mostly conservative colors with this, but the red and the orange are pretty funky and pretty cool looking, in my opinion. And if this car kind of hits your budget for price range, and you don't really want to swing for the Veloster N, released later this year, this isn't a bad choice. I think we'll see how the Veloster N compares to this and how it performs, but I think it's just going to be this just turned up a notch. The torque vectoring in this car works really well, and the overall driving experience is just it's kind of neutral, but pretty enjoyable.
Definitely a lot more to like than not like. I mean, really, if you had to come up with something, we're going right here too. I can't think of anything that I'm like, this is bad. Like, you can nitpick some things, which, you know, you got to do it. I mean, all these are all pretty competitively priced in this segment. So I guess it just comes down to taste, pretty much.
But yeah, overall, a nice package. I don't think this is something that I would overlook in exchange for the N, which we haven't driven, which hasn't really been released in the United States yet, but it's definitely, I think it holds a very valuable spot in the market at this price point, and it's a really good little warm hatchback, as everyone's been calling it. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video, and hopefully we'll get some more drive time in this in the coming months. Talk to you guys later.